Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is ANPR All Night Project Radio. I'm your host, Ryder. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Glad to have you all here with us today on our broadcast. It is currently early again, 7:23 p.m. on February 1st, 2018. As far as the weather is concerned, we're actually doing pretty good in the weather, I think, at this time. The last couple of days really just got under my skin. So much snow, snow everywhere. I really just can't stand it. I cannot stand it at all. I was going to go out the other day wearing one of my new suits, and I couldn't because of the snow and the slush, and I just really don't want to go to the process of perhaps messing up one of my suits. So, as it stands, snow. But we did get some rain today, and that helped clear out a lot of the snow. However, sadly, we're going to be dropping down to 11 degrees over the course of the night, and because it's rained, we're probably going to have a bunch of frozen rain as well. So I'm not really looking forward to that, unfortunately. That is pretty much what I think we're going to get. It's currently 41 degrees Fahrenheit, but expected to drop down to 11 tonight. So certainly I'm not looking forward to that at all. We did get some mail. So we're going to go ahead and read the mail now. It is concerning something that we talked about in our last show. In our last show, we talked about early access games and about Stardew Valley in particular. And I had mentioned that I didn't have all the information on Stardew Valley as my internet was currently down and I was unable to check. So here's a letter written to us. Really enjoying ANPR. Keep it up. Here's some info on the Stardew Valley release. And then they write, in April 2015, Barone announced he intended to release the game only once he felt that it was feature complete, refusing to put the game into early access program or accept any pre-sale payments. The game was released for Windows on February 26, 2016. Following its release, Barone continued to work on the game, taking feedback from the community and patching bugs, and stated plans to add an additional features at a later date. Barone anticipated adding in more endgame content, support for user modifications, and console releases. Barone stated that he initially planned a 4-player cooperative mode to be released in the game at launch, which instead was pushed to the future update. Now, I know for a fact that has yet to come out. I believe they're scheduling that for the first quarter of 2018, so hopefully we'll see it soon. Continuing here, in this mode, Baron planned that all players would share a common farm, enabling players to do different tasks relating to it, such as one player mining while others tended to different parts of the farm. The multiplayer feature is expected to support both local area network and remote online connectivity. Barone had planned for public beta testing the multiplayer feature in late 2017 for the Windows version, but was still working to improve the network code by early 18. Well, thank you so much for writing in and letting us know some more information about Stardew Valley. I certainly appreciate it. Very well written as well. And a lot of good information there to help us understand that apparently, as I suspected, Stardew Valley was not released in early access. So that was one of the topics we had talked about last episode was, early access, is it good, is it bad? Do games have to do early access? And it's, I think, pretty clearly obvious that the games don't have to. But, games also don't have to introduce tons of microtransactions and DLC and all that stuff into their game, and they choose to do it anyway. So I don't think with the gaming industry it's a very big sort of need as much as it is a want to. The sooner they can start bringing in money, the sooner they feel like the effort that they're putting forth is worth it, I suppose. So thank you very much for writing in. I certainly appreciate it. And guys, please remember that if you want to write in, you can absolutely do that. You can do that through YouTube. You can write, if you have any comments, you can put those down below. If you want to send a message through Facebook through YouTube, you can absolutely do that as well. And then there's also our Discord, which has the link is in the description of every one of our broadcasts, and you are able to right in through there as well if you want to join in on the Discord. So thank you so much for that write-in and for that information. I certainly appreciate it. Moving on to music, I know we haven't talked about music in a little while, but the main reason I haven't talked about music is because I wanted to, when I talked about music, I wanted to let you guys listen to music. And I thought that it wouldn't be that big of a deal with YouTube, and considering they're not going to monetize this channel for until we get either 1,000 subscribers or a certain amount of watch time, or maybe even both. I think it's kind of ludicrous, but regardless, um, they were they actually ended up. I believe they put ads on the video that had the last song in it that I put. So my goal, of course, was to keep ads out of all the videos because, I mean, if we're not monetizing, we're not monetizing. Keep the ads out. Well, unfortunately, even though I can't monetize the channel and I can't throw ads on the channel, it does appear that YouTube has no problem throwing ads on things anyway. So there, I believe, is an ad at the beginning of our second episode because of the music in it. So because of that, sadly, I will be unable to share music with you guys. Plus, I also don't want to risk any sort of strikes as well. So sadly, the idea, the premise, the plan to share music on this broadcast is just not going to work out. So with that said, I'm going to talk to you about some music, and then you can go to the internet, to whatever means you generally approach music, whether it's Spotify or iTunes or YouTube or whatever. And you can look it up and you can listen to the song itself, and in that way you can be exposed to the music, but unfortunately I won't be able to broadcast it through this show. So the song that I want to talk about today, and the artist that I want to talk about today, is Take On Me by a-ha. The reason I want to talk about Take On Me from a-ha is it's one of my very first listened to ska songs. Now, some of you may be saying, wait a minute, Take On Me is not a ska song, and you're right. You're absolutely right. It is not classified as ska. It is classified as synth pop and new wave. I would have honestly thought it would have just been pop, but it certainly is not a ska song. So let's talk a little bit about Take On Me, and then I'll kind of move over into why I heard it first as a ska song. Take On Me was originally created by a Norwegian synth pop band, a-ha, and it was released in the 19th of October in 1984. It actually took 2 different versions and 3 total releases to finally chart in the United Kingdom, and it reached number 2 on the UK singles chart in 1985. In the US on 1985, the song became the only a-ha song to reach the top position on the Billboard Hot 100, due in no small part to the wide exposure on MTV of its innovative musical video. Now, the music video for this, for a-ha, is definitely interesting. They combine real life film with animation, where a character goes into like a comic book or a newspaper, I believe it was, and there's interactions within that as well as outside of the paper as well. And it was just a very interesting, and I mean, it's very trippy to watch, for certainly, the music video. But I didn't initially know about it through the video, and I didn't initially know about it through a-ha. I actually knew about it through Real Big Fish. A friend of mine was very heavily into ska back in, well, it was probably back around the time that I was 19 or 20, so probably back in about 2007, 2008. He and I, we hung out a lot. and he showed me a lot of his music, a lot of the music that he listened to, music that I had never really listened to up until that point. And one of the bands that he exposed me to was Real Big Fish, as well as a number of ska bands. And it wasn't just ska as well, but ska seemed to be the sort of his primary musical choice. So when listening to the songs, I heard Real Big Fish's remake rendition of "Take on Me," and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was amazing that there. First of all, ska in general really kind of just blew my mind. The fact that there was guitars, drums, bass, what we normally expect in a normal band, but adding to that a bunch of horns and wind instruments, I thought was really a very innovative idea. Now, it may or may not have been innovative at the time, but for me, it was something I hadn't heard before. And I've always loved horns and the way that, um, that horns, whether they're trumpets or saxophones or whatever they are, that they sound very, very loud, very proud. And I just thought that adding those to a song that generally wouldn't have had a musical like that added to it was pretty awesome, and it stood out to me. And especially the way that it was incorporated into the song "Take on Me." That song, out of most of the other Real Big Fish songs, though I do love a vast majority of Real Big Fish, that song really stood out to me as one of my all-time favorites. So I've listened to and I enjoy the song "Take on Me" from Aha. But to me, the best version that I've heard has got to be the Real Big Fish version of "Take on Me." And that is why I initially said that I heard it as a ska song, because it was done by a ska band. Moving on to this day in history, a couple of interesting things have happened on this day in history. On this day, February 1st, in 1884, the Oxford Dictionary debuts. I find that quite interesting, especially considering as a school student, I use the Oxford Dictionary quite a bit and have to quote from it and reference to it. And a small tip here for anybody who is going through school: using a dictionary as a reference is generally accepted across the board in all of your papers. And the best part about that is that if you have to find sources, unless it specifically says you have to find, let's say 10 sources. 10 sources is kind of average. So if they say find 10 sources to quote that other than, say, your textbooks, generally you're able to use the Oxford Dictionary as at least one of those sources. So the way that I do it in my school is I will generally define the topic with the Oxford Dictionary and then move on to do whatever else I have to do. So if I was talking about, for example, let me just come up with an example. If I was talking about, well, now I'm trying to come up with something it's hard for me to do. But let's talk about, let's say Hollywood. Okay, I was trying to define, or I was writing a paper about Hollywood. Perhaps I could look up, now Hollywood may not even be in the dictionary. But you look up the word in the dictionary, whatever it is that you're trying to define, and you can use that as a reference. And that's what I generally do. So on this day in 1884, the first portion of the Oxford English Dictionary was published. Plans for the dictionary began in 1857 when members of London's Philological Society believed that there were no up-to-date error-free English dictionaries available. It took a total of 10 years to finish, and it was conceived as a 4-volume, 6,400-page work. They estimated that it would take 10 years to finish, but in fact it actually took up to 40 years. So it's pretty crazy. A whopping 20 volumes weighing over 137 pounds. It would reportedly take one person 120 years to type all 59 million words in the Oxford English Dictionary. Now, whether or not that's the individual entry words or all the words that describe the words, who knows? Um, but anyway, that is this day in history in 1884. The Oxford Dictionary debuts. Second thing I wanted to bring up for this day in history is on this day in history, in 1887, the official registration of Hollywood occurred. Harvey Wilcox officially registered Hollywood with the Los Angeles County Recorder's Office. He and his wife moved to Southern California a few years earlier from Kansas, where he had made his fortune in real estate. Wilcox had actually initially designed the community Hollywood to be a utopian-like community for devout Christians, where they could live a highly moral life free of vices such as alcohol. That was the initial plan. Sadly, though, after Harvey had died by about 1900, Hollywood had a population of about 500, compared to the 100,000 people in Los Angeles at the time. And as Hollywood and Los Angeles were connected by a single-track streetcar, it took over 2 hours to make the trip back and forth for the commute. There was also a problem with the water supply, and so at about 1910 or a little after, they basically decided to kind of combine things together, and the motion picture community, the motion picture industry rather, began growing exponentially in that area as well. The motion picture industry really liked the idea of the mild, sunny climate and the varied terrain of Southern California, so they sort of took up roots there. And sadly, that really have polluted, I guess, the idea that Harvey Wilcox originally had for Hollywood, because now what he wanted to be, Christians living without any alcohol, things along those lines, now is the center of Hollywood. It's the center of the motion picture industry, fame, glamour, fantasy, the whole thing. So quite a change from what it was originally intended to be, for sure. And it's amazing the short time that it took for that to even happen, really. So that was this day in history. A couple of interesting things to learn about. Things I certainly didn't know prior to looking them up for this broadcast. Hopefully you found them interesting as well. In one of my last broadcasts, you may remember that I spoke about my housing situation, the fact that I really didn't know what was going to happen. The insurance company had come out to take a look at the place, and basically just because we had built on this addition to the house. Sadly, they told us that they would not cover us anymore because of not having central heating and air. So we really didn't know what that meant. We didn't know if it meant that the house that we built, the extra little bit that we built, was perfectly fine, no problems, and that the only issue was that we did not have a central heating and air unit. And as we finally got more clarification, apparently that turned out to be the case. Their biggest issue was not that there was not a door between the other home and this home. They did not have a problem with the fact that there's not actually two exits, though I still think there should be two exits in this small room. Their biggest issue with insuring was the fact that there was no central heating and air unit, which we didn't know that we needed. We do have heating in this place. It's gas heating. And as far as air is concerned, we have a window, and a window that we could throw a fan in. So for heating and air, I don't see why they would have an issue. The insurance company did tell us that, they preferred us not to have gas as heating, but they would have rather us have an actual central heating and air unit. Well, if we had known that they wanted the central heating and air unit. We actually could have just gotten a hold of a central heating and air unit because the cost of installing the gas was pretty close to the cost of installing a central heating and air unit. Now, you may ask, if the cost was the same, why did you not just go with that in the first place? Well, we were thinking about it. However, the estimated and quoted cost of the gas when we first spoke to the company who was installing it, they told us that it was going to cost us literally 1/5 of what it actually ended up costing us. And it wasn't until everything was installed and put in place that they finally hit us with the final bill, which was 5 times the quoted price. So that was very ridiculous, horrifying, and devastating. But everything was installed, and, we're kind of past the point of no return at that point. So we've since learned not to deal with that company again. The only problem, of course, being that we do have to use that company to fill up the gas. So we won't recommend that company to anybody else. We won't use the company for any other reason. However, we do have to still use the company to fill up the gas tanks because the tanks are from their company. The tanks we did not have to purchase, fortunately. We don't even have to rent the tanks. They provide the tanks free of charge. But of course, we can only use them to fill up the tanks. So it's sort of their way of making sure that they always have money coming from us. Another thing that they lied to us about was they told us, based on the size of our house and the size of our tank, that we would probably use approximately 40 to 60% of the tank over the course of the winter. Well, we have so far had to fill up the tank fully, the first time, and then we had to refill the tank again recently, and it is now down to 30%. Now, I know that they don't know exactly how much that we would be using every day. However, they should have been able to estimate it a little bit closer. They had told us it would take us one tank through a full year, or the full winter months, and we're probably going to need 3 tanks to get fully through. So, back to the insurance, however. They did finally talk to us. We got a hold of the insurance, and come to find out that they would allow us to fully insure the home and to have liability insurance on this place out here. So that puts us in a bit of a situation in the fact that now nothing in my house is insured, which I'm pretty upset about. But we do still have insurance on the home, and we have liability insurance here on this property as well. So it's better than it was going to be, where we didn't have insurance on anything across the board. We also found out that this location that I live in cannot be considered as the same address as the home that it's built onto, but rather has to be a part of it's part of the address of the lot that was next to the home. So even though it's a part of the home, it actually does have its own separate address. Which I guess sort of makes sense, but also doesn't make sense at the same time. Kind of interesting how that works. But that's kind of where we're at there. So yes, we finally have insurance back. For any of those of you who were worried hearing about it in the last program, we do have insurance. We have full coverage on the house, and then we have our liability here for this place that I'm in here temporarily. I'm not sure what the plan is after I move out. I don't know if there would be a way to combine it all, or if we still have to leave it the way it is. But that'll be something that we'll find out eventually later on down the road. So what have I been up to recently? Well, aside from doing significant amounts of school, and I did do a significant amount of school today, spending upwards of 8 hours on between reading and doing work, doing paperwork and writing and all of that. Everything else that I've been doing today, or well, that was about everything that I did today, rather. What I did yesterday, however, was pretty fun, pretty enjoyable. A friend and I went out for sushi after school. He goes to school about 30 or 40 minutes away from where we live. He lives right down the road from me. He and I went out for sushi afterwards, and then I went out to the local thrift store. I did invite him to go with me, but he had things to do and he wasn't able to come. So we went out to the local thrift store after the sushi. The sushi was amazing. I had spicy shrimp and spicy crab rolls, and it was absolutely amazing. I haven't had sushi in months, so every time that I have the opportunity to get sushi, I'm beyond ecstatic. He got, I can't recall what it was, some sort of dragon roll, I think. It was a spicy, it was like a spicy tuna shrimp mix or something, I think. It was pretty good. It was pretty good. It had a different sauce on it than mine. We both had a spicy sauce on ours, but his was sort of a different. I don't really know how to. It's the sauce they put on the tempura, is what they put on his. And as a matter of fact, part of his did taste sort of tempura like, even though it wasn't a tempura. So I don't know exactly what was in it that gave it that tempura flavoring, but it did. It was very good. It was very, very good. His was a little bit spicier than mine though, because while mine only had the spicy sauce on it, his actually had apparently spicy flavorings mixed in with the meat inside of his sushi roll. So after the sushi, I went out to the thrift store, and I always like going to the thrift store. I don't know if you guys have visited thrift stores or go to thrift stores at all, but you always find interesting things. Not necessarily things that you want to buy or bring home, but always interesting things regardless. There's a plethora of things that I don't think many people would ever buy, but to be able to see them, to look at them, is always, an interesting and fun opportunity. So I get to the thrift store, and I go in, and of course the first place I walk over to is the suit location, and I'm looking around to try to find some suits that may fit, and I come across two suits that look like they may work for me. The hard thing, of course, of buying secondhand suits, and I guess suits in general, is you have to, you generally like secondhand suits specifically. They go by pretty much one size, and that size is generally matched with about the same size waist. Period. As I'm looking through, any of the chest sizes that are 50 usually have like a 40 waist. Any chest sizes that are 30 generally have about like a 20, 28 waist or whatever. I mean, like, they are all very similar in just across the board, no matter who donated the suit. They're very similar within a one or two numbers. So for me, I'm actually currently working on losing some weight. I'm working on doing some walks, and I haven't had the opportunity to do walks in the last couple of days. I really want to start walking more. But with all this snow, it's almost impossible to walk on a daily basis. So I just can't wait for the winter to be done so that I can get out and start doing my walks. And I'll keep you all up to date as I do the walks as well. But back to the thrift shop. I found two suits. I went and I tried them on. One of them I couldn't. It wasn't the right size. The other one, the first one, I really would have liked to keep it, but the shoulders were too long, so it just didn't look right. And you can't tailor the shoulders. You can't tailor shoulders at all. Period. If the shoulders don't fit, you just don't take the suit. 100%. Like, there's no way. Sometimes you can lengthen, and well, you can always shorten. Unless there's actual holes in the sleeves, but if it's just the fake sewn in buttons, then it's no problem to shorten the sleeves, and you can always at least pull an inch or two out of the length of the sleeve. And you can always, unless of course the pockets are super low or the buttons are super low, you can generally raise a couple of inches, take a couple inches off of the bottom of the suit. as well. So length isn't a huge thing, but the shoulder width is definitely one of the main things that you just can't really mess around with at all. And when I saw that the one suit that I wanted had too wide of a shoulder, there was really nothing that I could do. I just knew that I wouldn't be able to have the suit. Period. Um, so that was that was pretty much the end of that. But the other suit that I got was actually a really amazing suit for the price that I got it for. It was a Principe, I believe is how they pronounce it. It's a an Italian suit. It's written like Principe, but it says like Principe. Um, and these suits generally, at least on eBay anyway, they're going between $200 to $400 for the full suit. And the current modern suits are currently going for like new. They're at about like $1,500 or $1,600. So even the older suits still maintain their value. And I was able to find this suit, very nice suit. It was like a lightish gray 3-button suit, and I was able to find it for $6. It was on sale because on Wednesdays for ours everything's half off, so it was $12. But I got it for $6, and the fact that I was able to buy a suit of that quality and of that general price range for only $6, I found that to be absolutely incredible. And it made me sort of wonder if some of these people who are selling these suits on eBay aren't just going to their local thrift store but finding a suit and putting it up on eBay, which is very possible. Though whether or not they sell them in a rotation that's worth the actual effort, I don't know. But if you can go to a thrift store and buy, a number of suits for $6 a piece and sell them on the internet for $200 to $400, that profit margin is absolutely insane. Um, but it's hard. It's very difficult to purchase any sort of clothing, especially suits, off of the internet. If you don't really know your exact measurements, and you also are basically relying on the seller to know how to measure the suit jacket, because anybody can, pants generally have their own measurements, so it's not really a problem unless they've been tailored beyond the measurements that are on them. But when it comes to measuring the suit jacket, if you're off by an inch or two, it could be terrible. Your shoulders may not fit, and if, like I said before, if your shoulders don't fit, that's it. And as I was looking through eBay, I believe the majority of these suits are like you buy them, you're done. There's not really a return policy on the majority of these suits. So it's something that, you really don't want to order online unless you really know your size and you're familiar with like purchasing online. And perhaps you get into a dialogue with the seller prior to buying and, maybe ask them a couple of clarifying questions. I'm not at that point right now. I'm not confident enough to purchase online. And besides the fact that, a lot of these suits on eBay, yes, they are older vintage suits, but they're still pricey. Cheapest suits I'm seeing is like 150 some dollars, and that's a lot of money to spend on a suit that, that's not supposed to be your suit for like super important, occasions. If someone's buying a suit just for things like weddings and funerals and that's it, then I can see them spending quite a bit of money on one suit. But to have a suit, or to have a wardrobe of suits rather, that you can wear daily, as I'm attempting to collect, you really can't spend that sort of money on a suit, and be able, you can't spend $200 to $300 at minimum on a suit and be able to, expect them to be wearable every day, sort of just your walk around and experience life in suits. You just can't. So, for me, the vintage suits from the thrift shop, I like the style much better than the modern suits anyway, and honestly, they suit my build. My build, I don't want slim cut on my build right now. Like I said, I'm working on losing weight at this time, and I don't really have the intention of wearing anything slim cut until my cut is slim. So, And it's taking a lot to kind of get to the point where I can feel comfortable wearing clothes that are other than like a baggy t-shirt. I mean, I've always wanted to wear suits. I've always wanted to dress very nicely on a daily basis, and I'm slowly kind of working into that. It's very difficult to do, especially when you go out with somebody else and they're not dressed up. It definitely makes you stand out even more. Now, if you go out with somebody and they are dressed up as well, that's not so bad. But if you go out dressed up and the person you're with is wearing like a sweatshirt and jeans, you kind of stand out quite a bit. So it's difficult for me when I don't get out much on my own anymore, and I usually only go out and hang out with a friend or with some family members. It's kind of difficult for me to want to throw on a suit and to be contrasted with the other people that I'm with, and I'm the only one dressing in a suit. But that's just something that I'm eventually going to have to get over if I actually do want to start, doing what I've wanted to do since my time as a teenager, really, and that is, starting to dress nicely on a daily basis. So, um, I'm not sure if it's really a matter of fear or if it's just a matter of, you know, feeling uncomfortable. When I wear a suit, I feel very comfortable. I actually love the way that wearing a suit makes me feel. I feel at home, oddly enough, wearing a suit, and I feel very comfortable. The only issue that I have with it is right now the snow, the slop, the rainy mess, the nasty, disgusting outdoors can really lead to problems with with wearing nice clothing in general. Period, especially lighter colored clothing. And so a person who goes out in jeans and sneakers, you really don't have to fear that. They're just jeans. Um, and jeans are easy to wash. You don't have to dry clean jeans, so it's not really that big of an issue. But I feel that the majority of what I'm going to have to do, if I continue to want to wear suits daily, is eventually I'm going to have to start wearing suits when it's a nasty day outside. And if I do, then those are probably going to have to be suits that either I dedicate directly to those sorts of days, um, or whatever it is, I'm going to have to dry clean them a lot more often than random. Just like when I feel like it might be time to dry clean them, then I dry clean them. But if I wear suits in conditions that are definitely adverse to that, then I'm going to have to be dry cleaning a lot more often. So something I'm not really sure about how I'm going to be proceeding on at this time. But that's pretty much my thoughts on that subject. And I'm going to check and see if we have any more mail before I close out the broadcast here. Um, take a quick look here. It doesn't look like we do, but that's perfectly fine. No problems. All right. So we're going to go ahead and close the broadcast down here. Thank you all so very much for listening to the broadcast, for coming and joining and hanging out. I certainly appreciate it. I hope that you all had a blast listening, just as I had a blast recording. And this has been ANPR, All Night Project Radio. I'm your host, Ryder, and thanks for listening.